My name is Gary, your host at Mindset Growth Podcast. I am here with Heather, my co-host. Thanks for joining me today.
You're welcome.
We often try to do what they call a soft opening, but often that soft opening is short.
Yeah.
So it becomes very soft. So today we're
and slightly lame.
Slightly lame because we don't really take the time because we have a guest waiting. Mm-hmm. And then we feel like we need to get into the guest and respect their time.
Right.
So today we're going to hit some hot topics, and it's going to revolve around one person, but really multiple people.
Okay.
And then also character things that involve those people. So there's times in history that I can remember, and we're going to talk some about sports. So the name we're going to first talk about is Caitlin Clark.
Oh, that's a big one.
I know. It's probably a little special to you and I just because we are in Iowa City, Iowa, and it's where she spent her 4 years of college and played some wonderful basketball in the state force, and now has transitioned and went onto the WNBA. But there's a lot of similarities and things that we see, but there's 3 times now in my short or long life that I remember sports being revolutionized. And I'm not saying it didn't happen before with other people and that there's sports I didn't pay attention to.
Right.
But these are the 3, and we're going to hit those topics. And I think the thing that's interesting, there's this whole Caitlin Clark effect going on.
Right.
And it started soon after she got into college with just selling out stadiums.
Yeah.
Which is something you just didn't see in women's college basketball at all.
Right.
I'm just curious, if you think about this, what's something that comes to mind that would draw people in to fill a stadium for women's basketball? What was some of the hype?
With Caitlin in particular?
Yeah.
So,
or just in the sport,
first
but
of
with
all,
Caitlin.
Her uncanny ability to get open and make those far out threes, right? Obviously. But she also carries just a confidence and swagger to her that a lot of the time in sports with women in particular, you can go too far with it and we're automatically calling that person cocky or, all kinds of names come to mind. Or they're just playing conservatively and not quite as aggressive. So she has just a factor that makes you want to watch too. She's not too over the top. And just, she started breaking records. So
my gosh, yeah.
Everybody wants to be a part of that history.
Right. It's so much fun to watch, and especially when there's so damn much humility with it.
Yeah.
It's probably not a sentiment that everybody shares with me when I say that, but there's a level of confidence and arrogance that I think every successful person has to have, but there's really a huge balance in how she carried that out.
Yeah.
And so I agree with you. All those things were very attractive and were very impactful in that process. Another thing I think that really, as the couple years passed and she comes into her final season, was just the fact she packed out arenas everywhere she went. I mean, people from other states
she did.
Were watching. And the one thing that I noticed when I go back and watch other athletes and how they interacted with fans, that's another piece that really, to me, I respect her for that, because she will be late to the team meeting after a game because she's spending time with the fans.
Right.
Every little girl that's coming up that admires her, she's taking time to sign an autograph and interact and get the photos. So
it's not even just little girls anymore. What started as little girls being huge fans of hers has grown into little boys are like, okay, she's cool enough now. It's cool to wear a woman's jersey.
Right.
And I remember my son was even like, Mom, do you think it's okay if I get a Caitlin Clark shirt? Absolutely. Do you want one? Well, I don't know yet.
Right. A lot of that is just the fact of who she is as a person.
Yeah.
Love her or hate her, that's who she is. That's what she does. She has elevated the sport of women's basketball tremendously. And I think just from a diplomatic point of view, the piece of history to be told is we cannot see what that will be yet. Is this just a flash in the pan? Is this something that's going to elevate that sport?
Right.
The parent company, NBA to the WNBA, has had the WNBA as a loss leader. It's no secret. They pump money into it. They've tried to get that division of ball up and going, but really it's taken Caitlin to make the difference. And now this is where I'll probably get the haters. There are some of her competitors that are not so gracious towards her.
Right.
And
that's putting it nicely.
And they're putting out it's not just Caitlin, look at me too.
Right.
Which creates a lot of character issues for me.
Yeah.
And I guess that's where, I don't know, a year from now, it might be everybody's like, yeah, we're over this. What, it was a fun ride to see. Now it's big time. Things are changed, and it may go back to what it was, 8,000 to 10,000 viewers a game, and it may not. But I know when we start looking at people that have to beat their chest, which I'm going to get into other sports here soon about this as well, it's such an extreme, arrogant position to take. And it's going to create it's just polarizing.
It's already created the divide, definitely.
Right.
But I think also when we talk about a flash in the pan, marketers have caught on to this and just really, dug their heels in it and put their money behind it now too. So these contracts are for years now. It's not just let's do a 2-month deal.
Right.
It's a year's deal. So there's so much that goes into the talent and the personalities, but there's also that money behind it that pushes those things forward too. Like, for example, this is a stretch, okay? But hear me out. Think of all of these reality shows that we see and people just acting awful to each other. They've got a camera on them. They are expected to act a certain way, right? I feel like in a lot of ways, the women in the WNBA right now are kind of feeling that a little bit too, because the cameras are on certain people. They're getting the attention. They're getting the deals. So this also comes into where you're saying, beating my chest, look at me too.
Right.
Well, they're trying to get paid too. There's so much of that behind the actions.
But here's the piece that I would challenge that very person with. Mm-hmm. There's an amount of money that's going to come into your sport when you put 6, 8, and 10,000 people in a stadium. There's a whole different level of money that comes in when there's 80,000 sold out. And you've got large companies starting to pour in huge multi-million-dollar a year endorsement deals. Mm-hmm. That money trickles everywhere. And it's going to raise and elevate to where somebody maybe played no different than if they had worked at a local store and created a career out of it, to where now, but they got to at least do what they enjoyed as a sport. Now they're going to actually probably become very wealthy. And there's something, when I went back and coached lower levels of ball, some kids were better than others, but the one point I always tried to push, I don't care if everybody knows you're probably the slowest kid on the team, you have a role, and it's probably to support everybody else, make sure they have the gear they need when they leave the dugout, make sure everything's tidied up in the dugout. All of those pieces come back to being part of a team and being something greater than yourself. And I think that's one thing that's so endearing, is it's not all about her shooting points and beating her chest. She's passing the ball well, finding open teammates, and really elevating the entire team by doing that. And that's just another factor I feel that creates all this charisma around her personality.
Yeah, she's leading in assists too. I mean,
Right. So it's not
they've
being
been
a ball hog.
struggling following through with her attempts at assists, but
Yeah.
that's topic for a different discussion.
Right. But I'm going to shift a little bit. So we're just seeing instantly, we've seen college basketball go from sometimes almost free to $2, $4, $8 tickets on a Sunday afternoon to $600, $800, and over $1,000 for a ticket. We're now seeing 6,000 and 8,000 seats sold in an arena, maxing out at 80,000, even at away games. Now that Caitlin's playing, so now I'm going to shift back to 1996. I don't know if you remember who came on the scene at that point or not.
What sport?
Golf.
Oh, Tiger.
Tiger Woods. Young phenom out of California. And one thing that he was very well prepared, very well coached.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have all the stats in front of me, but I'm going to give a stat just with him coming back. And I believe he played this past Sunday, and the viewership went up 31% to the comparable final round in 2002. This is how many years into his career? 31%. That's huge for any network to pick up that much viewership, and they call it the Tiger effect. However, the first year he played as a rookie, he more than doubled all the ratings as soon as he came in. Endorsement deals, like I remember, I think Nike was one of his first big ones, was multiple times. And I don't have all the stats in front of me, and my memory is no longer as good as it once was. But it was, I'm thinking, on an average of about 4 times of what any of these pro golf athletes were getting up to that point. Well, if you're now, Tiger's got his slate full, what do you think is going to happen with other big companies that want to get into the PGA?
Yeah.
They're automatically looking for the next one and the next one. Do you think this elevated everybody else, or is Tiger the only fat cat coming out of that sport?
Well, here's my question. Did they have the pettiness of what we're seeing now? I'm here too.
Right.
Watch me.
I don't recall that. I do know there were a couple of bad boys out of the whole deal.
Yeah.
That's typical, I think, in any sport. I don't remember the pettiness in its whole that we see today. And golf is a bit different sport. It's more of an individual sport than what stick and ball
It's definitely not physical.
Are. Right. Oh, it can be physical.
Well, to yourself.
You're going to play
to yourself, but you're not out
there.
there.
You're going to play 36 holes in
with other people.
3 days. Right. It's not physical against each other. It's more a mental and good, healthy stamina to play those long rounds and walk all that distance.
Every sport has their good guy, bad guy. Do you remember Michael Phelps?
I do.
Obviously,
yes,
he's
absolutely
one of the greatest swimmers in the world ever.
Right.
If not the greatest. But there was a teammate of his, and he was very good as well. Can't remember his name, but he, got into some trouble over in, I can't remember which Olympics it was, but there's always
My point, though, I guess, really is I'm picking Tiger because that was a time that a sport just exploded.
Yeah.
And it really was over one person. And so when we talk about this, I see what he did coming into the sport, that the sport of the PGA or golf has never gone back to its pre-Tiger days, and it probably never will again.
Yeah.
It changed when he came in. And I don't know.
It's the rising tides.
It really is. It's the rising tides changes everything. The money has stayed there. It's put a lot of eyes on the sport. Certainly it has dropped some when he dropped out more. Mm-hmm. We'll see that amongst other sports, but it was one individual, again, that was extremely polarizing. Quite frankly, on a side note, watching his 14-year-old son, Charlie, right now is one of the most humorous things ever. Because you can see he acts a lot like his dad, but he's got a little bit more flair to him.
Okay.
And he's extremely good.
I'm going to have to take your word for it because golf is something I'd rather do than watch.
Okay. Well, in this case, I've been watching it some, and I've watched it because of Tiger. I've not always necessarily my favorite player. I just have respect for what he's done. But I also see the discipline now that his 14-year-old son's putting in. Mm-hmm. And I think we're going to see some of those ratings translate to another generation. And yet I hear Tiger's daughter saying, who's a phenomenal golfer in her own right, saying, I don't want to play the sport because I don't want to be that disciplined.
Yeah.
So I think when we go back to Caitlin Clark, the discipline was incredible.
Oh, yeah,
all the time from when she was little.
Yeah.
And then it followed on into her high school and college and now her professional career.
Yeah.
So the discipline was incredible. If you go back.
Have you seen like the videos of her workouts as a little girl even? Or coming up through high school? Just the ball control and how many shots she would put up. It's just, I can't imagine doing that.
Right. And then if you look at Tiger, it was the same way. Mm-hmm. Like they had a very disciplined regimen that he was on. And, you know, parents just coaching some low-level sports. Parents we all think our kids will be the next Tiger Woods, Caitlin Clark. Fact is, they're probably not, because none of us want to do the things they did to get there. Most of us wouldn't even love it enough to do those things. Interestingly, I was playing around to golf with a former high school baseball coach, and one of the most profound things he's ever said that I found interesting was that, you know, usually if you see a dad that's good and competitive at sports, then you expect their kids to be good. But he said, I look at their mother and can tell you much quicker if they're going to be successful than if they're dad. Because if mom doesn't like the sport, that kid's not going to follow through. The discipline won't be there and it will not happen. And I wanted to argue with him because this guy says some funny stuff sometimes, but he's spot on.
Yeah.
Because if the discipline's there and you start naming names, and we did, and I'm like, I can't argue with your logic. But if you look at Caitlin, her mother was extremely involved and self-sacrificing, as was her dad and brothers. Mm-hmm. If you looked at Tiger, his mother was behind him the whole way and very involved, and so was his stepdad. But it was two examples of that very thing that really the whole family was very disciplined.
Okay.
Probably more so for their child because they seen their love for the sport, and also they were able to be disciplined, and they were able to push them to the greatest potential they could as a parent until they got to the levels that somebody else had to pick it up and take it on.
There's the push, definitely, but there's also being the chauffeur. That takes up a lot of time. You're taking your child to lessons somewhere. Most of the time, we don't live in big towns, you know. For Caitlin, I think she did live in a larger town, and maybe if she had private, I know she went to Dowling. They have some fantastic coaches there. But, I mean, just taking my kid to a batting coach, huge. It's 45-minute drive one way. You're there for an hour and a half. For 45-minute drive back, you know, it's time consuming. 2 and 3 nights a week. Yeah. And when I coached, I would do all that batting practice with the kids, and then you end up still taking your own somewhere else. And it was just a lot of commitment.
Separately, I'm Gage.
And I'm Bontrager.
Together, we are Gage Bontrager Consulting.
We work on changing your mindset,
developing leaders,
building systems and processes,
helping you grow personally and professionally
to achieve the success that you want personally and professionally.
However you choose to define success for you.
Reach out to us and follow us on social media or look us up on the website, and that will put you on a path to achieve what is missing in your life.
Thanks for watching this episode of Mindset Growth Podcast.
There's a third one I want to bring up, and I have less information on the stats, but he revolutionized his sport, and that's Michael Jordan.
Oh, yeah.
And
absolutely.
I didn't get as many numbers when I was researching the Michael Jordan effect into sports, but he came into the Chicago Bulls. Clearly they were nothing. Once he left, they're not really recognized anymore again. And he come out of college not even necessarily being the best in college. He was really good, but he had a steep learning curve in college. The interesting part, though, is the discipline and the work that he put into his career. That was huge to finally get him onto the stage and where he was at. Mm-hmm. And I am remiss to not remember this name. I've read the book, have the book, but his personal coach that he hired put a letter in everybody's locker but Michael's at the Bulls offering his services. And one day when Michael finally caught up with him, he asked him, "Why did you not give me the opportunity?" And he said, "I didn't think you'd want me." Yeah. Because this guy was young in his career. And so they sat down and got to know each other. Nobody else hired him but Michael. And it totally changed Michael's career by not only having all the professional coaches he had. This was a personal coach that helped him develop mental strength and discipline.
That's huge.
And that was really, and once once Michael retired, he referred him to Kobe Bryant. We all know, again, Kobe was a protege of Michael Jordan's. Never quite as famous, I wouldn't think, if we look at numbers. But again, I don't have all the data on that one. But that took Kobe to new levels. And I think we see in the NBA some of the same things play out that we're seeing in the WNBA right now. There's people beating their chest, keep saying, "I'm better than Michael Jordan." And I probably don't
I hate hearing that.
I don't even need to name drop. Everybody knows who the person is. But it's just interesting that if you have to go around and tell people how good you are, you're lacking something. Yeah. You're lacking something. And it's usually some character to start with. But what Michael Jordan did for the NBA is also affecting the WNBA. It changed lives. He put millions of dollars in other people's pockets. And of course, he was highly confident. But if we start looking at the stats of how much he failed, it was tremendous. But one thing that I see with Tiger, I see it with Caitlin and with Michael Jordan, when they have a bad game or a bad day, they know how to shake it off and go right to the next play. Mm-hmm. You don't see them, like, for the next 3 minutes, make bad decisions. They can compartmentalize and they can move on.
Yeah.
I just find that real interesting as we go through life lessons. We have something happen at work and it just shuts us down for the day. Mm-hmm. Something happens on Wednesday and our entire week sucked.
Yeah.
And we've got how many more hours of that week? Like, how is that even possible? It's because we're allowing something negative to control us. It's bullshit. People need to get their head out of their ass and they need to understand that credit needs to be due where it's at. We're in control of our own destiny. It's our responsibility to take the talent we have and utilize it in the space we're in. Mm-hmm. And we cannot blame others. We cannot be jealous of others. We should let others motivate us into trying to increase our performances and take our performance to a new level. But we see that happen often where instead of working harder, they had all the breaks. They had this happen or this was in their, benefit.
That's 9-year-old mentality. Seriously.
No, I know it is.
And there's a lot of people that live in that. And it's so easy to point fingers elsewhere rather than take on that responsibility and say, no, I did this. Or, sometimes things just happen. It's totally out of your control. You just deal with it and move on.
How many times have things happened in your life that you looked at you could look at one of your friends and go, why is my life not as easy and nice as hers?
It's happened.
Right.
Yeah.
But now, how many years later do you look back and go, but I learned this from that experience?
Yeah.
And when another experience happens, it doesn't affect you the way it had the first time.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody can say that. And I think we too often want the easy road. That's human nature.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the tough one that's going to take us to the next level and make us a better person and help us to where we can serve others better. What's a word you think of when you think of, let's just say, those three athletes?
Well, I think you've already said it. Dedicated.
Yeah. There's two that come to my mind, and they're almost opposites, but they're really not. My first instinct is, the first one is humility, and the second one was confidence. But it takes a tremendous amount of confidence to have humility.
Yeah.
People who are arrogant usually don't have a lot of confidence. I can say that because I can say it from experience.
Yes. Okay. So I guess humility is not necessarily one of the first words that comes to mind when I think of them, because even though it's there, they are still very confident people. And why not show that now and then?
Right.
Doesn't mean you have to be cocky or arrogant, but yes, there's humility that I see too.
Similar to each other.
Yeah.
But the humble part is they're not running around. I mean, I see what you're saying with the humility. They're not running around saying, look at me.
Right.
They just let the stats do what the stats do, and they keep going out, working hard. They're not letting up. Mm-hmm. They continue to hone their craft.
Yeah.
So, interestingly enough, I seen an interview with John Daly, another PGA golfer. Don't know if you've ever heard of John Daly.
I think I have, but
most people have. Very colorful personality. And he's known for his partying.
Okay.
And Tiger had a 3-hour routine of warm up and hitting X amount of balls and this whole process every day. John Daly rolls up, they're partners, and John Daly ended up beating him on that 18 that day. And he was still drunk and hungover from the partying all night. And there's Tiger, and they get to the end and Tiger's just like laughing at him like, I don't know how you do this.
Uh-huh.
Probably it worked better if John had focused the way Tiger had. Maybe he'd have a lot better numbers and stats. Maybe he wouldn't.
Maybe he would.
Maybe what he's doing works best for him.
Right. What works for one doesn't always work for another.
So it's just funny though how you can have good days, bad days. At the end of the day, though, I think over the long period of time, the most disciplined person's probably going to have the best result. And most often, you will find a lot of those people. And I know Michael Jordan would have said this, and he said it multiple times. I'm not the best player. I just work the hardest. Mm-hmm. Tiger Woods, I think, would say the same thing, although he was phenomenal. But had he not worked that hard, I know with kids at lower levels, some of them naturally pick up the sport much easier. Mm-hmm. 2-3 years later, they maybe don't work as hard because they never had to. And then it's an adjustment for them. So there's a lot of life lessons. And what's crazy is we're talking this whole show about sports. I'm really not even a sports guy. I don't consider myself a sports guy at all. I don't play a lot other than some golf, but I don't play a lot of sports. I don't watch a lot of sports. I would rather work, but I am very competitive. Mm-hmm. So I often look at that competitive side of people. And it's typically people that have had to put in a lot of hard time to hone their craft and skill that really are successful in the end.
Right.
So you know, hard times make hard men. Soft times make soft men. Yes, it could be women.
Okay.
But it's a term. It's an old term out there that gets coined. But I just challenge people listening to this, and maybe I've upset everybody and ran off half our viewers now just because of speaking positively of Caitlin Clark and saying she sells out arenas, because I know they're trying to say the whole rookie class is doing it. They're not.
Right.
If you took Caitlin out, it's not happening. It's not. There's
if
no
you
reason
took Caitlin out, they wouldn't be flying on chartered flights. I mean,
we
listen,
wouldn't be even knowing.
Let's be honest about this stuff.
It wasn't until in the last month I even now know most of the names of the teams in the WNBA. Would never have known that before.
Yeah.
And I don't follow basketball.
Yeah.
But I do watch her play.
Right. Well, same. I didn't really watch women's basketball until I started hearing about her and just the Iowa women's team in general, how well they were doing. So, all right, let's pay attention.
Yes.
And before that, I didn't really watch.
I guess the thing that, just as we summarize a little bit here, the phenomenon to me is simply there's so much more that has revolutionized the sport. Other sports are just people. And I don't think we want to be so arrogant as not to honor and recognize the people that do it. And often it's people that are not seeking to do that. They're seeking to be the best person they can be. Mm-hmm. Before my time in motorsports was Richard Petty. I now watch interviews of his kids, and they would say they would be turning the lights off at the track, and then their car battery would go dead because he'd turn on the headlights to continue signing autographs till everybody left. Winningest driver by far. Nobody will ever compete with him. Not even a chance. But he was another one who probably put that sport on the map and started the whole craze of NASCAR and auto racing in America. And it was one person who just really worked hard at his craft, and he had a whole team and a family behind him. But it was just, and that was before my time, so I didn't mention him previous to this, but he did the same thing, and it's to this day he's very humble, has the title the king. Mm-hmm. You know, if you start talking to different people, you'll see that happen. I think of other sports, and often we think of names. You mentioned Michael Phelps, figure skating, Nancy Kerrigan, and
we want to talk about the bad boy of that one too while we're at it.
Well, I'm just saying,
Tanya Harding.
But I'm just saying, there have been people, you know, Ricky Carmichael in motocross. The problem is they still didn't put people in the audience the way that, like, let's say, you know, Caitlin Clark's doing, the way Tiger Woods did, the way Michael Jordan did. Mm-hmm. And you know, they got nicknames, some of them the GOAT and what have you, but they didn't totally revolutionize the sport. And Caitlin's story is still to be told. We'll know probably 12 months from now if it will be sustainable or not. Right. And I'm sure her sponsors are hoping so.
Oh, yeah.
What's a word of advice you would give to the audience when we think of this whole topic and you're working with maybe your own life and trying to develop and be the best person in the marketplace, or working with your kids and they're in sports? I mean, what's something that comes to your mind?
Well, something that comes to my mind is because this is where my life is right now, is working with kids, and you want to put them out there, let them try everything, just get yourself out there and see what you like. But you got to realize when your heart isn't in something too. I think that's just as important as, you know, you don't want to kill yourself over something that you're just not that into, but someone else thinks that you should be. So know where your heart is, work hard on where your heart is at, really. And if you want to be better than someone, then you need to work harder than that person. Right. You can't expect to get the same thing, the same accolades as another person is getting when you're putting in half the time. It doesn't work that way. So
what you're saying is, don't be the parent that's trying to push their child or live their life through their child. If the child wants a different path or wants to do something different, let them.
Yes, that's part of what I'm saying. Yes.
I mean, I figured that's what I picked up on part of that, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would just challenge folks to, at the end of the day, there's no way that we can all be Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Caitlin Clark, or any of these other great public figures. But what we can be is good people in our own communities. Mm-hmm. And we can carry very high moral ethics. And we can often contribute in our own society in a very beneficial way. And I think that's something that everyone should work towards. There's things that I think of when I see these three people. I don't see somebody who gossips. And it doesn't matter if it's true or not. They just don't say it. You don't ever see that slipping up. If I think of those three people that we mostly talked about, I see people that have good humor and are very balanced, and they have a really good friend network. They know who has their back and who does not. Mm-hmm. And so those are some things that I would challenge people to think about in their own personal life, because we can't all be on a stage like that. I don't know that I even want to.
Yeah.
So what I can do is be a good person, not spread bullshit about people that is true or not true, because by the time I've heard it and now repeated it, it's not really all true anymore. And so and I can also put a hand out, help those around me, and make my community better and serve others. And that's my challenge. I think everybody, if we want to change this country and this world to be a better place, it starts with everybody being the best person they can be. Nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with sports. It has with everybody doing the right thing. But as long as we all backstab and are trying to pull ourselves up, even in our local communities, we're tearing everybody down to try to be on top of the mountain. Let's go ahead and pull everybody up to that mountain. Stop blaming others for your problems. If I have problems, they're mine. I need to own them and address them. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you
for being on this episode of Mindset Growth Podcast. If you like this episode, please give us a thumbs up. If you have other topics you want us to talk about, please let us know that. Send us a message. All places you can contact us will be on this episode. You can find us on the social media pages, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you want to find us. We would love to interact with you. If there's other topics that you want discussed, we're happy to address them. And also happy to have guests on that would maybe want to cover some of these topics as well. Thank you again for your time and for listening, and hit the subscribe and like button.